Well, welcome. Gosh, we have a great one here for you today. It is Friday, December 10th, and we are going to do resume renovation today. Let me just share my screen. Hang on just one second. There we go. Well, gosh, we have a number of interesting things coming up, both with today's lecture and the lectures that I have set for next week. So think about maybe joining in the whole series. We have a lot going on right now. You can check all of these dates out over on my Self-Recruiter website. That is just selfrecruiter.com. Just click on the calendar. You have all my dates. A lot still coming up before the holidays hit. A little bit of an intensive. Let's really get ourselves ready for the new year and the hiring that's going on right now. Now, as we think about our challenge, let's think about resume renovation. I named it Renovation on purpose because I thought that part of the title really hit with the challenge. This is not let's put a little paint on the walls, let's put up a little wall covering or a couple accents. This is let's break it down to the studs, get rid of all the excess, and completely rethink how we're going to tell our career story in a much more effective way. Resume issues themselves require a paradigm shift if we're going to solve them both in story and format. So it's not as simple as, I just want to typeset it this way, even though close attention to typesetting is very important. And I'm going to give you all those details. But you also have to reinvent the story itself. We tell our story in what I would say a very poor way in general, way too wordy, and it needs to be something that instantly becomes visually digestible, which you're going to see in the samples coming up. So the story and format, we're going to have to also think about handling something else. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that means about 70% of the white-collar work is off-site right now. And so if you have not worked remotely before, that's a big concern. You may have to go back to different story elements to showcase how you can be effective remotely. Now, you might, but I've never worked remotely. Okay, I understand. And most of us have not previously. But we have done work remotely, even though we didn't work remotely. So just like you see on screen here, think of these different ways you might have interacted with a vendor or team member or a customer, client, partner, something like that, that can show work at a distance and show you being effective at a distance. Another angle to show your ability to be self-sufficient and work remote is if you've spoken to audience in the past. I know that is not the same thing, but it illustrates that you can get out there. So whether those were conference calls, webinars, or going to conferences themselves and speaking, all of that highlighting can also make them confident that, I think they'll be fine working remotely, because we have to handle that. Let's get back over to the paradigm shift. This is a fundamental change in the way you approach everything. Most people, have them look at their resume and have them do a little bit of a 3-second test on the resume. I'm going to walk you through just a little bit later in this broadcast. And they look up from that and they go, I can't tell you anything about this person. And it's in 3 to 5 seconds. We're going to go through all of that. That's because their resume is stuck in a very old style that requires something no one is willing to do any longer. Read. I have to speak at the public library and many other places. That part disturbs me when I have to say that, but that's the reality. No one will read anything anymore. I'm sure you've experienced it. You've probably answered someone's question in an email, probably a little short 2-3 sentence paragraph, very short. The answer's right there, and then they ask you the question again because they couldn't make it through the 3 sentences to get the answer. That happens. In case you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So really, if you are suffering and not getting the opportunities that you should be, or would like access to the opportunities that you feel you should be, that's a problem solving in how to look at your story a different way. Still truthful, but looking at it a different way. And if you need to work with someone, of course, I know exactly who you should work with. All my packages are over on my Self-Recruiter website, just under the advice tab. You'll take a look there. If you'd like to talk beforehand, give me a quick shout. We'll set up a time to speak. A couple other resources before we jump in. Of course, my book's a good resource, acts as a great roadmap to help you through a lot of different issues in job search, outreach, negotiating, even what to do with resume and LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. How to renegotiate when you get the wrong offer. All that's in the book. Few other things over on my LinkedIn side, long form articles that will help you avoid a lot of the issues that come up in job search. So I want you to think about those as well. And last thing before we jump in today is my LinkedIn lecture. Full version, unique version of this lecture is on my Self-Recruiter website, halfway down the homepage. You can see me large, the slides large. Really, you could use this as a start and stop tutorial to improve your LinkedIn profile. It'll help you a lot. Please do take a look at it, share it with friends, and all those kind of fun things. And by the way, in case you're joining me on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you might be watching this stream today, I hope you like, comment, share, message, all that kind of fun stuff. Hit the bell. Now, Self-Recruiter, this covers all of the lecture series. How is it you're going to become this one great recruiter that only looks after one great candidate? Well, you're the candidate. You're also going to have to be the recruiter, but you have to be a few other things. You have to be the strategist, the planner, the cheerleader. Got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and dust yourself off. You have to be all of these things and the person that keeps the coherent conversation going. Now, in order to become really, really good at that, we have to focus on a few different things. We have to begin to network in a dramatically different way. That's really the LinkedIn lecture. So I hope you watch that one. But also requires keeping one eye at all times on the toughest competitor imaginable. Those 4, 5, 6 people that if you saw them going after that job, they're going after the job. Forget it. Those people. We can beat those people very, very easily because most of those people, vast majority, suffer from something called ego and arrogance, and they don't actually prepare. They dust themselves off. They go, well, who are they going to hire? They're going to hire me, and then they don't actually do their homework. And with a little bit of thought, planning, and energy, hey, Matt, good to see you. A lot of thought, planning, and energy, you can outmaneuver them very, very quickly. By the way, I think you should work with some good recruiters, and I see a great recruiter on this session today, Matt Langford. You should check his office out with FPC. So let's think about this idea of taking control for ourselves, because we'd all like to go after the job, kind of see the job, if it only really worked that well, if it was that easy. Really, everybody's sitting home doing the same thing you're doing. They're hitting that darn button over and over and over. Almost never does it really say apply. Almost always says submit until we're so submissive. It's like a Friday night waiting for the phone to ring. It's going to be a telemarketer when it does happen. This is this giant rut we have to get ourselves out of that leaves us in a very unhappy place with our career, but mostly right now, a very unhappy place with our resume. Other people are not seeing your value the way you see your value. Well, first off, get over that piece of it. Get over what else is holding you back, and let's get in there and really fix the issues. Now, in terms of resume, we have to deal with this usual customer expected, because, that's what's expected. Shouldn't I do it this way? You know what you should do? Whichever way delivers the interview. And that's typically a little more unusual, unconventional, unexpected approach to the resume. And it's your job to be persuasive. You are not here to let them evaluate you, even though, of course, they will. Persuade them. That's your job. So let's go back to the very beginning. Why is it that a resume still matters in a digital world, in a remote world, in a pandemic world? Well, resume tends to be the first point of contact. Not always. They might become aware of us through a great LinkedIn profile. Many do if it's a great profile. But typically it tends to be the resume that catches their attention. That's the first opportunity you have to begin to take control of the discussion. So I want you to think about that, but let's think about the actual challenge behind the scenes, because if you understand that, you'll do something very, very different on your resume. So by the numbers, and this is not uplifting, but reality is like that sometimes. There are 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in for any decent job. Any decent job, you're after a decent job, 1,000, 2,000 resumes. I did not say 1,000 to 2,000 qualified individuals. Actually, 90 to 95% of these people are not right for this job. Well, how does this happen? Well, I think you already know. They see a great job. They go, oh, that's a good job. They must have a job around that one for me. Throw my resume into the ring so they see me and they hire me. And that ends up with 90, 95% of these thousands of resumes that aren't the right ones. So snow blindness, resume blindness happens very, very quickly as we go through these big stacks. Let's go back to what I said about no one wanting to read. So who can read the 1,000 emails, 1,000 resumes, 1,000 cover letters, and do all of their normal work? I don't really know too many people that can really do that. But that's still not really the challenge. The challenge is much worse than that. Recruiters, and I love the great recruiters, whether they're internal or external, tend to work on about 10 open jobs at the same time. So it's really who can read 10,000 emails, 10,000 cover letters, 10,000 resumes, and do all their own work. And I think you already know the answer to that. That's why these things like applicant tracking systems exist. So if you'd like yourself to be tagged like a little animal and have the system take care of you, well, let's not plan a great career future if that's our approach. So if this is the real challenge, no one's reading anything. You have seconds to capture their attention, capture their imagination. You know what I used to do? I'd collect them all up in my inbox or into a side folder. And then when I had a sufficient number, a lot of them, print them all out. Gosh, my boss used to hate that. You're killing the trees. I'm like, I'm making placements. And very quickly, you're like, what's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this one? Because it's the only way you find the right one. You have to look for what's wrong. So in those few seconds, they're looking for not only why capable, qualified, interchangeable. You've got to have that skill set. But by the way, if you're only capable, qualified, interchangeable, if I hire you, I am paying you less. So you're getting less. You don't want less. That's fine. I'll take number 2, take number 5. Doesn't really matter. All interchangeable. With your approach to your resume and as your LinkedIn and cover letter, everything else you position yourself with, you have to not only be interchangeable, capable, qualified, but somehow still different, exceptional, special, able to step out of line, see your value above the others. I don't want to leave you with the impression that you're going to work on your resume for 2 hours and have a brand new resume ready to go. Oh, you'll have the first iteration of your new resume, but you very likely are going to need 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 iterations of your resume to get to the right version, each time sharpening it and moving it forward. We'll teach you how all of that works today because small changes change perception. So let's get over to our story itself. You can't work on the resume without thinking about your story. The word story has some problems with it as well because we tend to think about, well, is that something made up? Is that something that's conflated into something a little bit bigger than it is? Well, if we're going to do this accurately, I think I'd suggest doing the same process I do with my individual clients. Sit down and have a deep dive interrogation interview with yourself. Cross-examine yourself. Grill. Look under the bed, in the closet, under everything. We're looking for every single piece of your story that somehow might have disappeared or fallen by the wayside. Now, when I do this with my clients, I spend about 90 minutes doing it. I come up with about 8 or 9 pages of notes in addition to all the materials they might provide me. 8 or 9 pages of notes don't fit on a single sheet of paper. And you're going to, of course, hear that I believe it should be a single sheet of paper coming up. So where you should really maybe start is grab a highlighter. Be very, very stingy with that highlighter and look over those notes. And you're only looking to highlight the drops of perfume, the nugget of gold, the emerald, diamond, ruby, whatever it might be. Now, whatever's highlighted, those items need to come onto the resume. The rest is all negotiable as to whether they are resume worthy. So don't try to overprove our capability and qualification. That should be a given, but make sure you come off that way. But the real decision point to any hiring, doesn't matter really what the role. If I believe you're capable and qualified, it is down to chemistry number 1 above all other things and confidence in you above all other things in chemistry. And that's before the credentialing, the background, who you've worked for, what was the actual work product, all of that stuff. That's why we also have to focus on why are you interesting and what makes you tick, what drives you, even if it may have something to do with non-work life. Have to bring that into your complete 360-degree story so you outmaneuver the competitor very, very quickly. Now, all these notes about you have to be filtered through. We're really sifting through, thinking about your brand, all the potential things that could separate you out from others, not trying to get you credit for every little thing. Oh, I should get credit for this. I should get credit for this. I should get credit for I get it. You should. But that dilutes the story. Why don't we just give you credit for the most special things that are exactly right so they go, and then they can't resist interviewing you. The rest of it, we're going to filter through a singular question which will help guide us. Why is it going to be the very best business decision they make today if they choose to hire you? So as an example, here's a resume a client had presented to me like a brick in the head right after a live in-person lecture. So, it was a little while ago. And gosh, after about 90 minutes of speaking, they come up to me and if you've not seen me before, I think you get a good sense from today's broadcast. Now I am on soda because it's the middle of the afternoon, but I've already been well caffeinated today. I'm passionate about what I speak about, a lot of adrenaline running. 90 minutes later, she comes up and presents this to me and goes, I've been told all I can expect is more of this. I'm like, what is it? And right away, I'm looking at this. Right away, I'm like, I'm getting sleepy. I'm like caffeine, adrenaline, everything else. I'm like going to fall asleep. I'm like, oh, that wouldn't be good. I should ask a question. What would you like to do? I would love to be in events. I'm like, oh, that's some great energy. Have you ever been in events? Ouch. I don't know if you see here. Let's zoom in here. That's right there, events coordinator. I am me with my entire background, all my years in career work, and I can't see it. All I can see is impressive law firm, impressive law firm. Oh, more impressive law firm for you. This is the same exact individual with the story told the right way, not the dull story that somebody else said, well, that's what's appropriate. No. Another thing you're going to notice here, if you take a closer look, there's no sentence structure whatsoever. Let me be extra clear. If I am reinventing a resume for a client of mine, there's not a single sentence anywhere on the resume. Why would I put a sentence on a resume in a world where no one will read? You have to distill down to the simplest concept communication so they can glance, absorb, glance, absorb, glance, absorb. I look down the page, you're right in my brain. I go, wow. So, of course, she said, not only do I do events, of course I do. I've done photo shoots, everything else. And I've done events at the Hella Gallery, the Guggenheim, at the Met, at Lincoln Center. Why don't you tell that story? Well, I was also the speaker wrangler. Wait. Like, who are the speakers? Oh, Tom Brokaw, Ted Koppel, Mary Matlin, James Carville. Okay, some of those Charlie Rose, some of those names do have to change. We have to update our story depending on what's in the news. To get your resume to go to that new version of the resume, that's an enormous transformation, dramatic change. You have to start with this concept of you being the product and think about how you're going to create engagement with that product. But it's much more this style of engagement because we want to like you. That's the whole chemistry piece. If I hire you, I'm going to spend more time with you than my loved ones. That's why we want to like you. We would like you to be capable and qualified, please, please, please. But that's why we want to like you, because I have to spend my time with you. I might as well enjoy that as well. Tell your full story. Tell parts of the story you maybe didn't tell before, even the non-work life piece. Personal branding is a huge piece. Your resume is a huge piece of your personal branding as well. Back to all those potential things that can separate us out from others, we have to consider that. So I'm going to show you just a few resumes first that I just pulled off the internet. So careful where you put your resume. These were up on Pinterest. Someone was collecting resumes, and I'm like, oh, I like resumes too. Let's see what's here. And we're going to bring this just a little bit larger. I'll still stay with you. We'll go a little bit larger so you can see that a little bit better. And so this first one, well, first off, kudos to Kelly on his or her name. Big, bold. Now, I did take the last name off. I figured you didn't probably need that. But you know what? But I'm not sure shades of yellow was the right choice. A little hard on the eyes. And plus, when you print it out, it's shades of gray. So that doesn't work very well. And actually, that's the last positive thing I have to say about this resume. What this resume suffers from, and actually most resumes suffer from, is a complete failure to consider something called information architecture. You know, what if they're only going to read 15% of your resume? No, 25% of yours. No, 30% of yours. Which 15, 25, 30% of yours do you want them to read? You control that based on how you design the resume. So here, I don't know whether I'm supposed to start on the left and go down or go across. How's it supposed to work? This does not work within just a few seconds of looking. Let's get my remote working here. I get the right screen active. There we go. Let's look at the next one here. Julia, of course, pulled the last name off. Figured we didn't need that. You know, I didn't write these comments either. Let's just see what it's down at the bottom. It says, who said the name had to be at the top anyway? Well, I'll say it. The name has to be at the top. Subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules. There are certain rules you cannot change. This is one of them. We're expecting the name at the top, employer title, employer title, employer title, education. It's a reverse half moon in I pattern. Suddenly this completely disrupts it. Now you may like that. I do like disruption. But Julia being down here in the middle causes me, again, to have an information architecture problem. Am I then supposed to start down below and digest that and then go up? How's it supposed to work? And actually, the only thing I can really see on this resume are the reasons I would not hire Julia. Dates are a reason I do not hire you. Dates are never a reason I hire you. And while dates are expected, then if we understand the I pattern, why would we ever put the dates over where the eyes are? And certainly not in bold, put them on the other end, smaller. No, don't look here, even though it's included. You get the idea. Also, what I cannot see, and I know they're a little bit fogged out, but that's not what I'm talking about. I can't see the employers. It's buried over in the middle of the text. The employers determine almost every ounce of your value, not your title. It's your title in conjunction with that employer and what we feel about that employer. Let's look at the next one here. Martin, kudos to Martin on his brand. I like his brand. It's very solid. I've seen this version of resume for decades. It's been floating out there forevermore. I'm not sure it was really worth 25% of the entire real estate available to tell me Martin's contact information. That seems like an incredible waste of space. Of course, huge information architecture problem with the blue column and the non-blue column. Should I start in the blue and go across? Do I go down the blue? And how's that supposed to work? And of course, all I can really see is education, internship, and personal skills, which are labels, gimmicky labels drawing all the attention and not Martin's contributions. Seconds, you have seconds. Which ones do you want them to absorb? Let's not forget the real reasons they are going to hire us. That has to be a huge part of it. So a little bit of differentiation between the two different storytelling marketing tools that you're going to use. One of them is your resume. That's really about catching or piquing interest, making them aware of you, getting them excited without delivering the whole story. My view is then the polar opposite being LinkedIn. How do you take what you create on this wonderful resume in a distilled down, very effective version? Maybe take it over to LinkedIn. Maybe I can come a bit larger now. Oh, there we go. Maybe we take it over to LinkedIn as a structural backbone skeletal system. But then I have to add back all the story elements, not the dull stuff, but all the story elements that are interesting until it becomes this three-dimensional sales brochure all about you. The LinkedIn side convinces them you're the very best person, also knocks your competitor sideways. Again, both of these are about influence. Back to the resumes. Let's give you details about how we're going to fix these resumes. First off, we have to get away from someone glancing at a wall of text and just making some assumption about us. Even if you zoom in on this type of resume, really doesn't help. All I can actually see is the word profile and professional experience. Again, those are labels. That's not going to help you. It's about clarity and influence together. Clarity of our career path, our story, and we have to influence their value judgment, their value judgment about us as this product that we're representing. So think about how is it that we're going to come up with just the right elements that can go in here that will create the engagement for you, that will get them excited about you. Here are all the details. 5 key areas to develop a winning resume. You are product 2. We're coming back to each one of these really quickly. Resume, the new definition. Your resume's goals, coming back to every one of them. Understanding stacks of resumes, and the 3-second test. Back to the beginning. You are this product 2. When a company chooses to hire you, they're buying a product, or at least they're buying your time and talents. I think we get that. You have to think about what kind of product you want to be. Do you want to be the store brand, where it's just a little bit off, the packaging and coloring on the print of everything, it's just a little bit off. Price very, very good. Price very, very good. Or do you want to be the Folgers, the Kellogg's, the Coca-Cola that almost reaches off the shelf and slaps them in the face? Also commands the higher price. You have to think about your product as part of creating your story and resume. Resume, the new definition. We have a lot of old paradigms on resume. It's real simple. It's a simple sales sheet to create desire. If you think about someplace like a Best Buy or one of those electronic stores, they make these things in there. If you go in there to kill some time, it could be dangerous if you bring your credit card. But if you go in there, they make these really big things in the back. Some are like 78 inches, 85 inches, 115 inches. I think you know what I mean. Those big, like wall-sized televisions. They're never going to be able to afford that 115 incher. But unless you're single, that is not an individual decision if you like your life. Therefore, they make something called a sales sheet. A little glossy pad sits right next to that big ticket item. Glue on the one end. I can zip it off. It feels so satisfying when I take that sheet. It's all the sexy things about this television, so I can take this home and sell my other half about why life will be different. I will take the garbage out without ever being asked. I'd do the weekend chores without being asked if we had this in our life. Same thing as your resume. The person you send your resume to is typically not a very good salesperson for you, and yet they have to walk your resume down the hall or send it to other people, talk about you. So you're building a sales aid or a sales tool to help them sell you up the food chain. Now, your resume's goal, let's be clear on its mission. Its mission is to deliver the interview. If your resume is delivering the interviews that you're after, likely don't have to change it. If it is not delivering the interviews that you think you should be getting, something's wrong with your story. So the goals to achieve that mission are simple. This is a clear, clean, straightforward format, a format where the information itself is put together in such a way that whatever I think is of most interest to the decision maker, not what you want to say, to the decision maker, is formatted so it can just be absorbed. Think of that word, not read, but absorbed. Of course, we have to clearly inform about educational background. That's part of it as well. Understanding stacks of resumes. So basically, your resume, if you click submit or apply, if you're kind enough to get one of the applies, it's going off toward this gigantic black hole in space called the data warehouse. If it reaches the data warehouse, kiss that resume goodbye. Probably not statistically likely to be seen again. But typically before it goes there, it is going in front of a person. And when it's in front of a person, that is our chance. You're going to be looked at and sorted into one of three stacks. And those are, there might be somebody in here. Stack number one. That's actually the good stack. Maybe. Have to come back and take another look. But they don't come back and take another look. You didn't do a good enough job conveying your value. You ended up in stack two. Stack three is a thanks but no thanks stack. They never go back to stack two. You know why? Because they have this incoming river of brand new resumes, which are so exciting. I'd rather look at these people than look at the people that couldn't convince me the first time. Stack two becomes a dead end. Now, the secret you may not like is the time. It is 3 to 5 seconds. This is not a trainer exaggeration. You are never getting longer than 5 seconds before you're in one of those stacks. So your first goal is, no matter what, you must get your resume into stack one, or it will never actually be read. Your cover letter statistical will never actually be read if it doesn't make stack one. Your messaging that's not the cover letter in email letter, very unlikely to ever be read unless you make stack one. But we have a further problem. The further problem is that we start with 1,000 to 2,000 resumes, which means 50 good resumes. So back to the first question: who could read 50 resumes, 50 cover letters, 50 emails, or whatever else you might have sent along, in addition to doing all their own work, times 10 jobs they're working on? You realize it's all impossible. So there's a secondary sorting process. You made the good stack, but before I invest or waste any time here, I grab your name, I drop it in LinkedIn, not on LinkedIn. Out comes the resume over to stack two. That was easy. My good stack's getting shorter. Wait a minute, you're on LinkedIn, and it's exactly what I'm holding in my hand. You're on the resume. Out comes that resume over to stack two. You didn't even consider the challenge. I am looking for you to further persuade me by the time I look at you on LinkedIn. I need more content than is ever on your resume. Let's reverse our thought process. The resume is a simple little cheat sheet all about you. The three-dimensional sales brochure that tells the whole rich story that they just love to hear is over on LinkedIn. Think about how your resume is going to survive this second round of filtering. One-page resume, unless it's two, but I hope you realize I am not a happy camper. Really, there's no time I'm going to tell a client they can have a two-page resume. If you need a 2-page resume, you lack confidence. Anybody's story, edited properly, will fit on a single sheet of paper. Now, I happen to be at the New York State Department of Labor giving a lecture on LinkedIn, and resume comes up. I mentioned resume is a single sheet of paper in all cases. Suddenly, this guy in back is flipping out. Oh, come on. What if you've been a CEO and got a 30-year career? It's never going to fit. Okay. I hear you. Take a breath. I don't think your unhappiness is because you didn't like my answer. I think your unhappiness is because you find yourself sitting there going, well, how come no one can see my value? What am I doing here? Not a surprise. This guy hires me. He hires me. He sends me his stuff. It is 6 pages of my eyes bleeding. Impressive. And CEO and COO before that, and CFO before that, and 30 years of endless career he could not stop talking about. When you develop such a career like that, you need almost no detail on the resume. Just the list of what you've accomplished as far as who picked you is so impressive. The detail is minimal. You're never getting that to a single sheet of paper. I'm like, boom. Of course, he's a CEO again. A lot of people in certain fields and further up the food chain, we think we need those CVs. Well, if you'd like to be employed, you certainly do not need one of those CVs. You need something just like what I create for you. So what are we looking at on this single sheet of paper? We're looking at your name, which is your brand, your current or last 3 employers and titles, and your educational background. Now, when I would teach this in person in front of big audiences, we're live streaming today. I'd have people, I'd hear them. They go, oh yeah, John said, just put your last 3 employers and titles. I'm like, I did? When did I say that? I certainly did not. I said what we're looking at. If you asked me a different question, what would you like on a resume? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'd like a resume to be complete from the time you entered the workforce to today. Now, are you listening? I said that's what I would like. If your work history goes back to 1972, we don't really need to see all of that. I would seriously cut some of that. It will hurt you. So think about what you're being taught, but also think with a clear mind. Don't be misled or led down the wrong path from assumption. 3-second resume test. Let's show you how this works. Now, if you have your resume, go ahead and pull it out. This is just for you, so there's nothing to think about. Don't look at the resume yet, not until I tell you. But when I do tell you, you have to look at your resume, and I know it's you. You have to look at it with fresh eyes. I don't know this person. That's me. And in the time I give you, I'll tell you to stop, and you just tell yourself what you can absorb about this person, which is you. Ready to go take a look? Go ahead and take a look. And stop. And it's never going longer than that. For those that didn't have the resume saw me do it. That was 1001 all the way through 1005. You were in one of those stacks. Most people look up from that and go, oh, I can't tell you anything. I'm like, that resume needs to change dramatically. I object to objective statements all of the time. Well, first off, I'm not going to put a sentence anywhere on the resume. Therefore, there won't be an objective statement. And an objective statement is about what you want someday. Nobody cares about what you want. Well, I care. Nobody else cares what you want, except maybe a good recruiter. So you have to think about, where to go in that space. Those collection of things as we get more mature in our career, we tend to have all these things begin to collect at the top of the resume, core competencies, highlights of whatever, highlights of everything since kindergarten, where I got my first gold star. Like, okay, but I don't think that should be on the resume. I think what you do is take all of that space at the top, throw all that away. Maybe I might use that content someplace else on the resume. But what goes at the top is something I call a positioning statement. Positioning title is probably a better way to say it so it doesn't sound like a sentence. In the simplest iteration, when we're going to show you a bunch of them, simplest iteration, it's 4, 5, 6 words. And you know what it always is? Every single time? Dead bullseye for every job you're sending to. So the part of the final resume, once you really get to the final version, the only part that ever changes is the positioning title. And every single time it adapts to be absolutely a bullseye for where you're sending it, whether you've ever held that job before or not. You're presenting yourself as qualified. If you've never held that title before, it's really simple. They'll look down the page, realize, oh, he's never held this title before, but he thinks he's qualified. Absolutely. Let's show you some of the stuff we have coming up here. So again, here's an example of what collects at the top, that big paragraph up top. And even if we zoom in, how far do I get? High energy detail. I lost all my energy reading about how high energy they were. So still really doesn't work. But you realize simplified down like this, I cannot miss this person's value or what they bring to the table. Different people and a few other iterations to see. This one's indirect media PR, community liaison. This one's an accomplished sales professional. I have the whole story I'm going to tell you about this one coming up here in a few slides. Experience extensive contracts across industries. Oh, software, hardware, and services. Just what I'm looking for. Just what I'm looking for. By the way, they don't currently work in software, hardware, and services. The rest of that story coming up. So you really realize now you have quite a challenge, and it's a clarity challenge. It's a distillation challenge. It's making sure there's consistency. Even the dates here, one's a 2, a TO, and the other's a dash. All of those things. Or using words like facilitating or maintaining or coordinating. Ugh. Sounds like a gopher. We have to use words that elevate our value and also don't make them think of us as a gopher. Same exact story distilled down to things that are valuable. Or you can go back to the one that doesn't really work. Your job is to envision how you're going to transform your resume from this block of text that makes people tune out to this story that instantly draws them in. And whichever piece resonates with them, they go to it like a magnet. Very powerful. Now, as a recruiter, and I didn't tell you all my background, but yep, 3 different disciplines on a desk as a recruiter. Every top candidate that I work with, this is exactly what I did to their resumes to be able to place them. Because what I found out was those top candidates that were off doing such a great job, their resumes really stunk. They were not great at telling their story. Their resume did not represent the story I discovered simply by interviewing them. They would never get hired from that old resume. Boy, a lot of placements there. I want you to think about all the things you should include in your resume and make sure not to cut off too much, even though we might cut off a little as we mature. Now, I promise you the rest of this story. A guy calls me up from the Carolinas and he says, gosh, I've had a great run, 11, 12 years in contract furniture sales. This is obviously quite a while ago. This is someone selling like 1,000 desks type situation. Now, Price Modern, you may know them as a brand. I did not. Hayworth, I certainly do know as a brand. And other than those 3 words there, corporate office furnishings, there's not one other mention of furniture here. When this person reached out to me, they said, I had the great run, everything else. I'm so done. I'm so done with furniture. So done. But every time I send my resume out there, we don't need a furniture salesperson. I'm like, quit talking about furniture. And then the second thing I asked is, what would you like to do? I'd like to be in software, hardware, services. I'm like, that's a great field. I used to place it. Have you ever been in that field? 15 years ago, I'm like, so long ago, it doesn't even make your version of the resume. So what I did was I shortened the resume to this super paragraph talking about the last 10, 12 years. And then I expanded the earlier telling, because this person's challenge and someone on this broadcast today's challenge is probably to sell old experience. That was their case. So I expanded the earlier stuff so now they could see hardware, software, services on the resume. And then I use this positioning title essentially to hijack their brain. They pick it up and they go, oh, it's just what I'm looking for. Accomplished sales professional in software, hardware, services. They look down and they see this stunning sales deliverables. Achieved $50 million cumulative sales to date, ranked top 10 revenues every year since 2002. Blah, 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 blah. Everything that would make the sales manager jump right out of their chair. It's all the reasons why I would interview that person. Now, this is the bottom of a resume. Yep, there's a whole resume above this. I wanted to teach you a few things showing you the bottom of this resume. If we begin to truncate our background, cut our background a little bit because we mature, you're going to have to make some decisions. So in this case, we decided to start or stop this person's story in 1999. And we'll go, oh, yeah, that's a good time. We'll talk about their forward. And we're starting with EDS, which is Electronic Data Systems. Now, if you're not familiar with them, EDS is one of those companies. EDS hires you. Oh my gosh, do you walk on water? What is it? What is it? Every field has one of those. Finance, it's Goldman Sachs as an example. So gosh, I'm sure these stunning companies must hire some stinkers. Sure, a few of them sneak in. but the perception is, oh, you must be amazing. So that's a great place to start the story. Now, just look below that. We have 3 prior employers, and 2 of these 3 prior employers also hit that same level of stunning: Kaiser Permanente and PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers. Within eyeshot, you have 3 crown jewels going, oh my gosh, they all hired you. Now, those 3 extra employers add 17 years of extra background to this person. Anybody on today's broadcasting to be 17 years older? Well, maybe a few, not too many. We also get hung up on thinking about size is necessary to communicate something. That electronic data systems, I can tell you, is 10-point bold. Sizing is going to come up on everything shortly here. Don't worry. The 3 employers below that, they are either 7.5 or 8-point bold. The titles are half a point less than that, and the location is probably 6 or 6.5 point. The entire 3 employers is just 3/4 of 1 inch on the sheet of paper. You do not have to make everything large for them to see it. The sprinkle on top of the dessert, the cherry on top of that, that's what these things are. They'll see it. Trust me. Now, let's also talk about the very bottom of the resume. I'm a big fan of splitting the bottom of the resume. It's the only way to really be efficient on a single-page resume. Notice there are 3 universities here, and yet only 2 of them are treated the same. Sorry for this word coming up here, but these 2 degrees on the left, that's great. But this thing on the right, well, that's a certification. That does not trump the 2 degrees. So it belongs over on the right. Now, if this happens to be your field, you're probably jumping out of your chair going, oh, the PMP. Oh my gosh, that's it. Yeah, I know. The PMP is the thing. But the PMP does not trump the degrees. It goes under the degrees or to the right of the degrees. You may be even so enamored by your acronym or PMP or whatever it is that you'd love it. Oh, top of the resume. No. It doesn't belong there. But if we are so enamored and we'd like to find a way to cheat the system and get it to the top of the resume, how about simply John Crant, PMP, or CPA, or whatever else that you might like to sneak up there. We'll give you sizing and all that stuff coming up. Community involvement. Does that belong here? What's that doing here? Or passions or those kinds of things. What's that doing here? Well, you need the character. You need the character check mark on the box. So I'd like them to go, wow, you did all this for these companies and you had time to give back to community. Sounds like you'd be a good hire. You'll do a better job if I hire you. So I know we're not supposed to get good works credit until later or after, but gosh, we need it right now. So don't hesitate to put that stuff in there. Again, a reminder, it takes both, not just the story, but also the format. So let's talk in detail about this format. I'm going to give you all the sizing starting right here. Now, Betty Jo here, my cousin, that's why I cut off her last name and the contact information. I figured you didn't need all of that. First thing you're going to do is highlight everything on your page, and you're going to make it, are we ready? 10-point. And then we're going to go down from 10-point. These are not for you, and you have the wrong idea of what creates legibility or readability. So, I like to change the rules. I'm going to violate my own rule right away, go up to the name and make it 18-point bold. By the way, the sizing piece here is the only piece that is not written down somewhere, not in my book, not in my articles. I would write that part down, or you can replay this video. So 18-point bold on the name, then your contact information. A lot of people stack it up like a layer cake, eating up real estate. Single line of contact information, 7-point. And it's going to go like this when it's 7-point, unreadable. While it's highlighted, we're going to fix that. And I have screens coming up to show you how to do it. But what we're going to do is simply add 1 or 2 or 3 points of character space between the letters until they spread out. And you'll realize even at 7-point, completely readable when the spacing is handled correctly. As we get down the page, then we look at the basics like employers. Employers are all 10-point bold, but notice the comma, location, and date are not only not bold, they certainly aren't 10-point. In this iteration, they're 7-point. Now there's a special extra line on the first one. We're going to come back to that. Just look at Salvation Army or United Way. You've got the traditional employer title. So I'd like 2 points of space before the title. We're going to show you how to do that, but essentially we're going to add 2 points of space there. Windows are coming up to show you that. Title line, I'd like 0.5 point less than the brand. That means it's 9.5 in size, mistake people make is they bold it. Oh yeah, bold it, that's me. No, then your title and the brand are fighting in the brain constantly. It does not work. They have to work in harmony, synergy with each other. So a half a point less than the brand. So the brand pulls the focus because that carries the value. Put your title in italics, non-bold, so it still pulls focus, but it works in harmony. Now I like 4 points of space after the title, before the bullets. Screen's still coming up to show you how to do that. Bullet point sets, we simply scroll over each bullet point set, and I take the first one, I make it 8.5 in size. And when you do, it's going to get a little tight, a little hard to read. While it's highlighted, you'll fix it. And what you're going to do is between every bullet, screen's still coming up to show you how to do it, you're going to add 1.75 points of space after every bullet. Let's go back up to this line, that this extra line of Good Samaritan Village. What's this thing here? Well, I can tell you, Betty Joe, my cousin, moved from New York to Florida, and it's a eye opener when you move from a state that pays wages properly and has actual benefits to a state that pays substandard wages and has no real benefits or very cursory benefits. And that was a shocker, quite a bit. Cannot have someone think, oh, United Way, Salvation Army, Good Samaritan Village. I lived in Florida 13 years before I escaped. I can tell you every second or third mobile home or trailer park in Florida, and there's an awful lot of them, every second or third ends in the word village. So I cannot possibly think someone went, oh, great career. Oh my gosh, your career went right into the toilet. No, this is the nation's largest not-for-profit long-term care organization. By the way, there's nothing wrong with working at a mobile home or trailer park, but that's not where she works, and we cannot have that confusion. If the person sitting next to you, random person, does not know your brand, you probably need one of these descriptive lines. If the random person sitting next to you would know your brand, don't waste that real estate. Save that real estate to talk about your value. If you need the descriptive line, it's 8 point in size, just a little tiny bit smaller than the rest, obviously, and 2 points of space after it. Now, all that spacing that we described, I want you to think about, because this spacing is what makes it all work. You can have a lot of variety, just make a rule list. You can have different sizes, different everything, as long as it's applied absolutely consistently. And then people go, wow, I can just read this so easily. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, oh, it's all that work. Go back to the contact line I didn't show you. What should be on that contact line? I'd like you to start with your LinkedIn URL. Simplified LinkedIn URL. Make sure to clean that up, not like X2 4G. No, go into your settings and make it clean. LinkedIn/in/John Crant. Okay, it's nice and clean. Well, that one's taken, obviously. City, state, not going to hire you because you live at 123 any street. So city or state, email address ending in your cell phone number, not your home phone number. I don't care that you can't get your cell phone number in your home. It's your cell phone number that goes on here. And you notice that the two things I want them to do are on the outside, which I'm sure you've already read by now. So let's think about that. Talk about adding space. Here's where I have to apologize for Microsoft. I love apologizing for Microsoft. 20, 25 different versions of Microsoft Word out there. This is my current up-to-date version of Microsoft Word on Mac, which probably looks nothing like your version. So you're going to have to learn the concept here and go hunt for how to do this on your version. On my version, it's as simple as go up under Format, down to Paragraph, and this is about adding space after each line. Then a box pops up, and in the part that says after, points after, I simply put the, I want 2 points, I want 4 points of space, I want 1.75 points of space. All of that I put in there and hit enter, and magically that space just appears. The contact line, that's the one we have to spread out. I go up under Format, down to Font. The font dialog box pops up. I click over to Advanced, where I can either expand or contract character spacing. Contracting, maybe I have one bullet that's just a little bit too long and it's dipping onto a second line. I could ever so gently squeeze that line just a little bit to have it fit. But most times it'll be with the contact line where I spread it out by 1, 2, or 3 points till it fills up the whole page. All of that together will help you create a really great resume. Don't forget, very likely it's going to take you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations, maybe even more. Each time you'll go, great, I have my new version. You pick it up by itself. What do I like? What can I detect? How can I improve it? Pick it up and do the 3-second test, which will convince you a little bit more. Put it next to the original and see what other ideas. Back to the drawing board. Don't stop too early. The more effort that you put into your resume, getting it to the right version does not have to change other than that positioning title at the top, which I change every time. Work pedigree. That's a strange word. Think of horses and dog food. Okay, I've got the right word. What I'm talking about here is we may get the 3 to 5 seconds of the resume, but we may not really think about the right things. We're looking at the quality of these companies, whether I really understand them or not, but my perception of them. Titles and accomplishments, even though I said I really wouldn't read your accomplishments, and of course your educational background. So here's some proof. This is the world's simplest resume right here. Todd Smith, Nestle USA Director of Quality Assurance, Kraft Foods Quality Assurance Manager, Coca-Cola Company Quality Assurance Engineer, University of Florida, BS in Agriculture. If this is all that's on the resume, I guarantee it's about the simplest in the world. But I also know that everybody watching and listening right today or on replay, all of those folks have some opinion about Todd. Well, what can we get? Well, has the degree. That's usually a pretty good thing. I see career progression. I see engineer to manager to director. Oh my gosh, these are 3 great companies. These are great companies, aren't they? I used to love to do this in front of in-person audiences because it's so easy to bait the audience a little bit. And someone would go, oh yeah, those are great. I'm like, how do we know? I never worked food and beverage myself. But I can tell you, I have a close friend and client that's worked at GTE Internetworking, which became Genuity, and Level 3 Communications, and Liberty Media, Nokia Siemens Networks, Cisco Systems, Motorola Solutions. And I can tell you every single one of those organizations are absolutely messed up beyond belief. A gigantic meat grinder inside, grinding up the employees as fast as they can, spitting out the parts. Gosh, my friend works right in the wheelhouse. But you know what? They see all those brands. They go, "Oh, stunning! Oh, you must have learned everything or learned what to do." So same thing here. But let's prove to you the effect here. You're now the manager, having to hire the spot that Todd might go into. But there's 2. There's 1 interview spot left. But there's 2 people. There's Todd and someone else. Todd and someone else. That other person, just for argument's sake, they have the same University of Florida BS in Agriculture. They have the same engineer to manager to director. But they did it for 3 food and beverage companies you've never heard of. There's like a million of those. Let's see, is it Todd or the other one? Todd or the other one? There's no choice here. Todd gets this interview every single time. That is the value of brands. If you didn't connect all those dots, let me just do it for you. If it is within your power, if it was within your choice, never again accept a job from a company that the random person sitting next to you has never heard of. That does nothing to help your own individual brand value. Ideally, you must move to better and better brands. I have one client that over the course of the last 15 years has managed to move from one absolutely stunning employer to the next absolutely stunning employer to the next. So much so that now when they send out their resume and they get virtually every interview they ever want because of what background they built, they pick up the resume and they go, oh, they all hired you? Because just one of them hiring might be a really great indicator you must be special. They all hired. The better and better brands you can pursue, even if it was messed up inside, the much, much better outcome for you. Saw a resume with nothing on it, really. Value everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. Where you're going to lose your value now is how you detail the rest of the story. What you decide to put as your achievements under those employers and titles. Of course, has to be bullet pointed, has to be absorbable, tangible, a lot of deliverables. So I hope you focus your story elements as much as possible on these type of performance issues or efficiency issues. And you know what? If you can't get to percentages, dollar signs, those kinds of things, you're going to have to use more visual language, like redevelop office workflow. Oh my gosh, that sounds great. And I can imagine redeveloping the office workflow. Learn to tell your story in a better way. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? I know that's such a strange way to ask it, right? You know how I learned to ask that way? As a recruiter. Because as a recruiter, I found out people were lying to me. I mean, dumbfounded. I'm like, they're lying to me. How could they lie to me? Human beings, I tell you. So What I want to know here is some clarity. You know what? If you still have $196 that you owe that college, you know what you don't have? That degree. If you're 3 credits shy of getting your degree, you know what you don't have? That degree. What we need is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you did not receive your degree for some reason, put the university or college down. Put the coursework toward the field of study, not a coursework toward a BS and whatever. That's a little too close to the baloney line. You cannot misrepresent or 3-card Monty on your education. Any hint of anything mishandled on education, not moving forward with you. Get your full credit. I had a client a few years back. I was reinventing resume, LinkedIn, getting ready for my interview session. And I looked at their resume. I'm like, oh, yeah, looks like they have the degree. And then I looked over on their LinkedIn. I'm like, doesn't really look like they have the degree. Well, no, which is it? So it comes time for the interview session. I said, well, let's start with education. I'm like, take another breath. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. Just tell me whatever's going on. He was like, oh, yeah, that was a tough time in my life. I was actually there on all expense Army scholarship. I won the Navy scholarship too, but you can only accept one. I'm like, whoa. You're a dual scholarship winner and it's nowhere? Because they're so hung up on the fact they didn't finish the degree, they forgot to actually tell the story. They also achieved, I'll get this wrong because I'm not really a military guy, but they achieved like wing cadet commander of whatever. I'm like, and it's nowhere in your story? Suddenly the new version, oh my gosh, they still clearly didn't have the degree, but oh my gosh, they were ready to go plaster this thing on the light post out on the sidewalk. They liked it so much. I'm like, oh, I love it. Truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Just be clear. Get as much credit as you can get, not 1 ounce of misrepresentation. Designing your resume, it's really about moving your brand forward by helping them visualize what you bring to the table, helping them think about your brand value, your career path, everything else. Of course, informing about the educational background. The last word about Word, there's really no love lost here between me and Microsoft here. But Word is a great example of why I don't particularly like them as a company. In all these years, they've never bothered to fix it. No matter how many iterations they put out that they try to charge you for, no matter how much they try to move you to this subscription model, so it's endless revenue forever, they just don't ever bother to fix it. The problem is if you spend all this time to manipulate, adjust the sizing on your resume the way I suggested, and then if you follow the instructions, must send Word document, I would never send a Word document. Word document of my resume would never leave my cold, dead fingers. It's not happening. If you sent the Word document, you now have no idea of what the resume looks like. It could look very similar to what you created, or it could look like a completely different animal. That's because the preferences file that tells it what to look like stays as part of your computer. When it comes to my computer or any other computer, it opens by their preferences file, which could look very similar, could be a completely different animal. When you're all done with your resume and all this work, there's a video over on my YouTube site called Headless Horseman, which will walk you through it. Change it over to a PDF. Now, years ago, there were a few problems with PDFs. There's no problems with PDFs. No matter what software creates it, what computer creates it, no matter what software reads it, no matter what computer reads it, it's perfect every single time. Also, all of those applicant tracking software systems also take PDFs. There's no purpose for them asking for the Word document. Well, maybe on occasion, recruiters might ask for the Word document because they'd like to strip out your contact information, which is absolutely above board. They should, and put their own stamp on the resume. But really, any recruiter worth a grain of salt or worth working with can easily do that with a PDF or the Acrobat. So maybe you use that as a little benchmark as to which recruiters really rise to the level of the ones that you should work with. Take your first step or your next step with your resume, whatever you need to do to help it, and understand this is a continual improvement process. So let's repeat. Just want to point you toward a little bonus for today. I have a great cover letter over on my self-recruiter website right under the advice tab. It is called Knock Knock, how to write a cover letter that will open doors. Just go to self-recruiter website, click on the advice tab. There's resume samples there as well. But this will come up and this article will give you the whole structure for a very effective cover letter. The opening and closing paragraphs, incredibly important, what goes in between, and essentially how do you set yourself up for success? Well, it has to be about them before it's ever about you. Let's not forget that, because the entire process is not only a sales process, but it's also a dating process, all mixed together. Well, thank you guys for joining in today. Lots of great lectures still coming up next week before the holidays hit. If you need help yourself, don't hesitate to check out my selfrecruiter.com website. Right under the services tab, you'll have all the different packages that I offer. And if you need to talk before you know which one is really right for you, send me a quick email. We'll set up a time to chat. Hope you have a great rest of your holiday season and hope to see a number of you next week. Take care. Have a good afternoon.